Right, so artificial light at night has transformed the way that we live over the last 150 years, but it also has its downsides. But using the right lights with the right attitudes, we can use light with minimal disruption to human health, wildlife, and the night sky. I'm a founding board member of the Australasian Dark Sky Alliance, and as most of you know, we're a group of academics and lighting experts whose aim is to educate the public and policymakers about the hazards of artificial light at night and to promote responsible lighting at night. ADSA promotes the lighting principles encapsulated in this diagram for responsible outdoor lighting. It should only be used if it serves a purpose. It should be no brighter than necessary, making allowance for the type of human activity and the reflective surfaces it shines on. It should be targeted and it should be warm-coloured. My field of interest as a medical practitioner particularly relates to the impact of artificial light at night on human health. So for the next part of this talk, I'll go through some basic physiology and then quantify the latest evidence relating to the human health impact of artificial light at night, and then explain why I believe that LED lighting is actually the solution to the problem. Hopefully at the end of this, I'll leave you seeing this as an opportunity rather than a threat to the lighting industry. Most of the human health effects of artificial light at night relate to disturbance of our circadian rhythm and in particular a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin is a very ancient hormone and has been in existence almost as long as life itself. Melatonin fine-tunes our body's day or night or so-called circadian rhythm. But being such an ancient hormone, it is involved in far more than just circadian rhythm control. In addition to controlling circadian rhythm, melatonin has, at last count, 27 other functions that we've identified in the body. These include tumour suppression, immune defence regulation, indirectly, it's why you make less urine at night, and the list goes on and on. So interfering with the melatonin cycle can lead to significant health effects, as we'll see. We have an inbuilt circadian rhythm clock in our brains that, left unchecked, runs on about a 25-hour cycle. Melatonin basically fine-tunes this, and under normal circumstances, melatonin levels are very low during the day and rise during the night. Along with diet and exercise, good sleep is one of the 3 cornerstones of good health. The perception of light, particularly blue light, by our eyes interacts with the pineal gland and our circadian rhythm centre to produce or to suppress melatonin, and hence adjust our inherent circadian rhythm to actual circumstances. The melatonin also adjusts peripheral clocks in other organs. This is a power spectrum curve of daylight that plots the wavelength of light on one axis and the strength of that wavelength on the other. It shows that daylight covers all visible wavelengths and is strongest in the blue portion of the spectrum. While all visible wavelengths of light have some impact on melatonin secretion, it is particularly in the blue wavelengths that melatonin is primarily controlled. It should come as no surprise that these controlling wavelengths match those found in the blue sky in daytime. So, during the day when there's a high blue content in sunlight, melatonin secretion is suppressed. As evening approaches, the blue content of sunlight dramatically decreases and melatonin secretion increases. For the last 1 million years, until 150 years ago, firelight and candlelight were our main light sources at night, and it makes evolutionary and survival sense that our eyes adapted to have optimal vision at night in the predominantly orange wavelengths of firelight and candlelight. The introduction of so-called white LEDs has fundamentally changed the light that we use at night. White LEDs rely on an optical illusion discovered by Isaac Newton, where the brain interprets the combination of blue and yellow or blue and orange lights as white. White LEDs are in reality a blue LED light with a phosphor coating that converts some or most of the blue light to other colours. The low electricity of LED lights, the low electricity consumption, has seen us attempt to turn night into day, but this has come at a cost. Unfortunately, the blue spike of the underlying blue LED exactly coincides with the wavelengths of light that suppress melatonin secretion. And it is from this that we see most of the major health effects of LED lighting. We use Kelvin rating as a shorthand for blue content. It has its shortcomings, but it's used so much that I'll stick for it for this talk. So I want to quantify for you the latest research into the effects of artificial light at night. The American Medical Association raised the alarm about this in 2016. Some in the lighting industry label this as scaremongering. So what is the truth? The next few slides are a summary of the latest scientific references detailing the impacts of artificial light at night on human health. One of the big problems in this research, particularly in early years, has been what we call confounding factors. Trying to separate what is actually due to the light as against other variables that may be the real cause of the health effects. We see, for example, there's an increased incidence of breast cancer in nurses who do regular night shifts. But is that due to the artificial light exposure, or is it due to other factors in the lifestyle of nurses who work at night? As the studies have progressed over the last 10 years, scientists have come up with better study designs. The results I'm about to show you are based on what I believe is the highest quality, most recent data, and has effectively dealt with as far as possible these confounding factors. Like all these studies, the outcomes are dependent very much on the nature and the dosing of the artificial light. We see a range of effects, for example, with exposure of blue light affecting sleep disturbance. Small doses of blue light at night only seem to have minimal effects on getting off to sleep. The belief that teenagers in particular have major sleep disturbance due to the blue screen exposure may be overstated in the low press. Sleep difficulties that many teenagers have may be as much about what they're looking at on those screens as to what the screens are themselves. Also, it must be remembered that teenagers have a naturally retarded circadian rhythm, not becoming sleepier till later in the night and not becoming wakeful till later in the morning. In contrast, moderate increase in outdoor lighting, particularly street lighting, certainly does cause quite significant sleep disturbance. Obesity is linked to increased exposure to light at night. Initially, it was thought this was due to the decreased desire to exercise when sleepy, but it's now been identified as being quite independent to sleep disturbance and is due to the involvement of melatonin in regulation of appetite
Do you not
hormone.
like it? Which one? You didn't like
There
it?
is an increase in
Really?
the incidence of insulin resistance and diabetes in shift workers. And this incidence is directly proportional to the
The texture of the tofu was weird, but the fight that
Right, team, we've lost sound here.
I'm sorry, you've lost sound because I muted everyone because someone was having a conversation speaking over Ken. So, Ken, could you go back one slide, please? And could everyone else please make sure they're on mute because it disturbs the very good presentation that we're listening to. Sorry, Ken. Ken, you're still muted. You'll have to unmute yourself. I don't have the power.
How's that going?
That's better. Thank you.
Terrific.
Thank
Okay, I'll
you,
go
thank
back a
you.
couple of slides.
Great.
Obesity is linked to increased exposure to light at night. Initially, it was thought this was due to decreased desire to exercise when sleepy, but it's now been identified as being quite independent of sleep disturbance and is due to the involvement of melatonin in regulation of appetite hormones. There's an increased incidence of insulin resistance and diabetes in shift workers, and this incidence is directly proportional to the amount of blue light exposure at night. Even just one night of increased exposure to blue light at night can lead to detectable insulin resistance that lasts days or even weeks. Macular degeneration is one of the commonest age-related causes of blindness and correlates strongly with areas of high outdoor artificial light at night. There's a whole range of mental disorders which are directly related to interference with our melatonin cycle, particularly with introversion and depression. The main problem is the lack of blue light during morning hours, and some studies have shown that increasing blue light exposure in the morning hours in nursing homes dramatically impacts on the occurrence and the severity of depression. I can think of no better place for the design of circadian lighting than in nursing homes. The statistics for the relationship of cancer to excessive artificial light at night, particularly blue light, have varied over the years. These figures are from the most recent reviews and meta-analyses. And it is thought to be due to the fact that melatonin has a central role in the suppression of cancer cells. Long-term studies have shown there's a direct relationship between premature death from heart disease and exposure to artificial light, particularly blue light at night. And again, it's because melatonin is involved in multiple biochemical processes related to keeping our cardiovascular system healthy. One of the biggest recent studies was done by Sean Kane, formerly from Melbourne and now from Adelaide, looking at all-cause mortality. All-cause mortality does not define the specific cause of the death, but rather the premature death related to another variable. In this study of 88,000 people, they wore light monitors, which allowed for very accurate quantification of individual light exposure, both indoor and outdoor, and followed them for a mean duration of 8 years. And this is a very sobering result. Sean states that in people with high exposure to artificial light at night, on average, their life expectancy decreases by 5 years. The conclusion of all this points to the need to use artificial light, particularly blue-rich light at night, where we must, but minimise it where we can. So after all that, how about some good news? While LED lights, in particular their high blue content, appears to be causing significant health problems, it is not my belief that the alternative is to live in the gloom. I actually believe that LEDs can also be the solution because of some of the inherent properties of LED lights and our physiology. If we look at the lighting principles again, LED lights easily achieve 3 of the desirable outcomes where previous generations of lighting technology could not. The ability of LED lights to be focused and targeted so we do not have unnecessary light spill or glare is far superior to previous technologies. LED lights can also be dimmed and controlled with computers and such things as motion sensors and timers with little decrement to the lights themselves, something that earlier technologies could not do. To address the problem of blue content, we need to go back and do a little bit more visual physiology and think how the eye actually works at night. Our high light level vision is mediated via the cone receptors known as the red, green, and blue cones. If you can perceive colour, you are using your cones. Low-level monochromatic vision is achieved through our rods, which are maximally sensitive in the green and blue part of the spectrum. This is a qualitative graph and does not show the actual sensitivity of the rods versus the cones. To do that, we'd actually have to draw the graph like this, and in fact the graph would be about 4 times higher, but it wouldn't fit on the page. Rods have a similar sensitivity to cones in red and orange, but are around 1,000 times more sensitive in the green and blue parts of the spectrum. A significant breakthrough was made around 15 years ago when, thanks to the concept of adaptive optics, which was invented by astronomers, we were able to finally image individual retinal cells in human beings. These are the photographs of the retina of 12 humans with normal vision and normal colour vision. The cones aren't really red, green and blue. They're actually blue, purple, purple and yellow, but they've been recoloured to make the concept easier to understand. What was found out in these investigations was that the majority of people have about 70% red cones, 25% green cones. However, the percentage of red cones could be as low as 10% and as high as 92% in people with normal colour vision, attesting to the enormous ability of the brain to interpret visual signals. What is very consistent is that only 5% of our cones are blue cones. We have so few blue cones that we actually cannot image in blue. It's an exceedingly complex area of research, but essentially we see with red and green cones, and by different neural pathways, the blue cones simply identify which bits of that image is blue. This actually is an ingenious mechanism to deal with the fact that the lens system of our eye causes severe chromatic aberration and is incapable of focusing red, green, and blue light at the same time. And it turns out we do not need that much blue to trigger this blue recognition. In 2015, papers emerged that our colour perception is essentially normal under well-balanced 3000 Kelvin lights, and any additional blue was superfluous. In 2016, Robert Dick formulated his optimal stimulus theory that rather than trying to emulate daylight, we could achieve maximum acuity with minimum brightness and minimal blue by designing the spectrum of our lights around the optimal triggering of the maximum number of retinal receptors. He therefore proposed that night lighting should be predominantly a broad spectrum of red and green light to stimulate as many red and green cones as possible, with not too much green that would oversaturate the rods, and only enough blue to allow for good colour rendition. This light appears as orange, and the power spectrum of such a light would look like this. I tested this theory on 15 astronomers with normal vision and normal colour vision at the University of Southern Queensland, and confirmed that the brightness of light required to achieve normal visual acuity was lowest in the orange and green spectrum of the light. But green effectively wiped out night vision for 10 minutes or more, and therefore orange was the optimal region spectrum for night vision, consistent with the evolutionary theory I mentioned before. Over the last 10 years, white LEDs have developed to have better and better colour rendition, known as the Colour Rendition Index on a 0 to 100 scale, abbreviated to CRI, with less and less blue light required to get high colour rendition. As we optimise the red and orange part of the spectrum by using newer phosphors in the newer generations of LEDs, the need for blue to achieve good colour rendition has decreased. This is demonstrated by lighting manufacturer Westinghouse with the apples on the right, depicting from the right going to the left their early 2700 Kelvin lights with a rendition of 70 up to their newer 2700 Kelvin lights that have dramatically improved colour rendition without increasing blue content. The curve I used before actually is a Philips light, 2700 Kelvin with a high colour rendition index of 97. And the evolution continues with the creation of human-centric lighting with excellent colour rendition and minimal or no blue at all. The ability to manipulate the power spectrum output of white LEDs is actually solving the problems that LEDs created. For example, Shuji Nakamura, co-recipient of the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2014 for inventing the white LED, is one researcher whose company, Sora, is producing white LED lights with very high colour rendition index and essentially no melatonin suppressing wavelengths. These have applications indoors where the violet spectrum is not an issue for sky glow or wildlife. Returning to our best practice principles. Human-centric LEDs can address the need to minimise blue light and melatonin suppression. So that just leaves us with two remaining challenges. Firstly, changing our attitudes to light at night. We need to better appreciate the harm that artificial lights at night can do and design for this. And we need more designers and lighting electricians that understand these issues and take this all into account. I am not a street lighting engineer, but will comment on the use of streetlights from a physiological perspective. Does street lighting take into account our night vision physiology? And how does this equate with commonly used streetlights? Old technology streetlights do not emit in the frequencies that the human eye needs, as we previously saw, and hence have low CRI values. The orange high-pressure sodium lights do not suppress melatonin or cause much sky glow, but colour rendition and object recognition is very poor. And the mercury vapour lights, also known as metal halide lights, are emitting large doses of harmful short wavelength light. The big debate over the last 10 years as we switch to LED streetlights is whether we should be using 3000 Kelvin or the higher blue content 4000 Kelvin lighting. A number of studies have used target recognition distances by drivers on test tracks to try and answer this question. Studies in China and Europe have shown that low blue content, high CRI lights between 2700 and 3000 Kelvin are as good or better than higher blue content lights and are superior in foggy conditions. Queensland University of Technology recently studied this matter, but have yet to publish their data. They found no advantage of 4000 Kelvin over 3000 Kelvin. The elegant research by Gibbons et al. In the USA is often quoted as supporting the superiority of 4000 Kelvin and even 5000 Kelvin, but has been criticised as misleading. Indeed, his conclusion in his 2023 paper states that 4000 Kelvin and 5000 Kelvin lighting had consistently longer detection and colour recognition distances compared to high-pressure sodium lights. But this statement misrepresents the data in the paper. Reading through the 75-page report and analysing the graphs showed this conclusion is missing a few key words. Based on the data, the correct conclusion should have been LEDs were superior to high-pressure sodium lights, but there was no significant difference between 3000 Kelvin, 4000 Kelvin and 5000 Kelvin LED lights. Why he made that omission and why the paper reviewers missed that error is puzzling. All of these papers looked at the ability for pedestrians to judge the speed and distance of oncoming vehicles, and all papers found 3000 Kelvin was superior to all other types. Photographs of street scenes with lower and higher blue content to show the superiority of the latter completely ignore the fact that the eye can adapt to different spectrums and correct for the lower blue content, something a camera cannot do. So such photos therefore prove nothing. Worse, they can be misleading. This Los Angeles comparison claimed that sky glow was less under the new lights, but the exposures were not comparable, and one was taken on a cloudy night while the other one was taken on a clear night. What about real studies? Well, it'd be unethical to turn out the street lights and see what happens. But in England and Wales, councils dramatically cut streetlight usage as a cost-saving measure. And Steinbach et al. In 2015 showed no resultant increase in motor vehicle crash rates or crime rates. France turned off its freeway lighting in 2021, and there's been no increase in freeway accidents since then. Parts of Germany and other European countries are following suit. In the last few years, there's been an increase in both the blue content and brightness of headlights in motor cars. In the USA, headlight brightness has doubled over the last 9 years, and this has been claimed to be a safety measure. But to date, there has been no concurrent decrease in motor vehicle accidents at night associated with increasing brightness or blueness of headlights. Single vehicle crashes have decreased 19%, but this suggests that other crashes have increased. The impact of millions of cars with brighter blue-rich headlights on sky glow and wildlife, as far as I know, has yet to be quantified. Given all the harmful effects of blue light at night, I believe we should not be using any more than necessary to optimise our vision. And as yet, I've been unable to find any convincing evidence that we need to exceed 3000 Kelvin in our street lights and our headlights. Excessive lighting, particularly excessive blue light, does not appear to be doing anything. Far from being a threat to the lighting industry, this is an opportunity. We've been through the bright blue adolescence of white LED lights. Now is a huge opportunity for the lighting industry to move on to the new mature era of lighting that simultaneously suits our needs and protects the night sky, our wildlife, and our own human health. And it begs the question.
Cheeky one, Ken. Thank you very much for that fabulously
My pleasure.
informative presentation. We've got a lot of good commentary as well as questions, and people are answering each other's queries. But if everyone has a look at the bottom of their screen, there's a little heart symbol which says react underneath. If you had a question that you wanted to ask Ken, you can click on that and put your press the raise the hand button, and we're happy to take some questions. Otherwise, I'll run through the ones in the chat. Ralph, do you have your hand up? Would you like to ask a question? If so, please take yourself off mute because I can't do that for you. So Ralph, do you have a question?
Yeah, hello. That was a really good presentation, and I had a couple of questions for you, Ken. One is you talked about human eye and their evolution and how our night vision is actually better with warmer color temperatures. I just wanted a bit more elaboration on that.
Yeah, look, one of the things that the common belief has actually been that red light was what the eye is best tuned to at night. But that's actually a hangover from the old black and white darkroom technology where they designed black and white print paper to be insensitive to red. And it just spilled out from darkrooms that we should therefore be using red light outside. But the problem with that is that the red light doesn't stimulate the green cones, which can be anywhere from 25 to 80% of your receptors. So some people it work well, some people it doesn't. So the idea of using orange light is to be able to get 95 of your cone receptors, both the red and the green, and that covers the individual differences of people.
Yep. You had another slide up and you talked about Sora and the zero blue light, and they're using violet. There are quite a lot of ophthalmologists out there are really concerned about particularly higher energy and narrow bands of light and human eye health long term. Have you got anything to say about like using violet pump like that in an LED sense?
I can't I would agree with what the ophthalmologists are saying that that it doesn't come without its downsides. It's certainly a way of dealing with the melatonin side of things, but
yes,
we are getting into higher energies. Nakamura actually regretted starting with blue light in retrospect and wished he'd gone to violet straight off. But yes, that doesn't surprise me that they have their concerns about it. And I suppose we just have to wait and see. Maybe we've cured one problem and created another which is worse. We'll just have to see where we go. But we're actually not needing that much in the blue spectrum to actually get the color rendition. So it's certainly not the only answer. And I think that the blue pumping is still giving us great color with minimal short wavelength light.
And I loved your last slide asking the lighting industry to consider using warmer color temperatures. So thank you very much.
That's it. My pleasure.
Thanks, Ralph. Barbara, you'll have to take yourself off mute and ask the question of Ken.
Hello, thank you for that presentation. It was underwriting so much of what I have researched and been exposed to through the University of New South Wales Department of interest in this area. And one of the huge perpetrators of this issue is Ausgrid. Ausgrid, I have a lot to do with councils. And if you ever have an issue with Ausgrid, you contact Ausgrid and they tell you, contact your council, you contact the council, and they tell you to contact Ausgrid. They are totally unapproachable, unget-atable. I mean, have you ever had any dealings with Ausgrid? Because they not only control street lights, they have highway lights, they have park lights. They're a huge, amorphous, impenetrable organization. And if we could make headway through and to them, it would be a real advance forward for all the reasons that you've outlined today.
Look, I have not had any dealings with Ausgrid. Here in Queensland, our main roads are done by Department of Transport and Main Roads. Non-main roads is a combination of Energy Queensland, which combines Energex, Ergon Energy, and the councils. Energex are quite on side with the 3000 Kelvin, but they recognise that the councils are the customers buying and choosing the streetlights. And so the actual issue, I think, is with the councils unifying to really push for going for the warmer lights. And I think we need a top-down kind of political solution to this as well. I have had some difficulties with Department of Transport and Main Roads up here. They have acceded to turning down the brightness of some lights, but they do prefer to use 4000 Kelvin lights. And I can't see a physiological basis for it.
Yes, I mean, it's also to do with the design of the street lights. They just go up into the night sky. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I wrote a paper and it was presented to the New South Wales Shadow Environment Minister. She asked for it, actually. And then she gave that to her counterpart in power. And nothing has happened. That was 18 months ago. So I don't know where to go next.
Barbara, I'd be writing to Penny Sharp, who is the actual Environment Minister. I used to be on a council in New South Wales. This is a decision. The councils do contract who puts the lighting in on council-run streets. State managers who put, or they do the contracts for state-owned streets in New South Wales, and there's also federal-owned roadways. So there's 3 levels making decisions. It's not a uniform decision process. And I think Ken's right. We need to look at how do we advocate nationally to get a national standard that everyone needs to comply to. And I think that's something ADSA might be able to play a role in. It would be great if you could send us your paper.
I have already. I've sent it to Marnie.
Great. Well, you could send it to me. That'd be great, and we'll have a look at that moving forward. Lou, you had a question. Lou.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
thanks.
Ken, for your talk. It was wonderful. I'm a bit confused though. I'm dabbling in a bit of amateur astronomy, and our dark adaptation as regards looking at the night sky means we use red light. So from your talk, I understand, unless I've got it wrong, the red light is more, it stimulates the cones more. So what we're doing at night time, we're stimulating the cones, but we don't want to stimulate the rods. I'm a bit confused how that works. Can you perhaps?
Okay, so part of the reason that you're using a telescope is to actually gather enough light to be able to stimulate cones. So if you're, for example, looking at Jupiter or Saturn and you're seeing colour, it's actually your cones that you are using.
Yes.
When you're looking with the naked eye up into the sky, you are largely using your rods. That takes about 15 minutes to kind of get to about 90% dark adaptation and 30 minutes to get to full dark adaptation.
Yes.
What happens when we did the tests at the University of Southern Queensland, we found that the red light needed to be 40 to 50% brighter than orange light to have the same visual acuity. So by using orange light rather than red light, you can actually have even less light on your telescope field and still be able to see what you need to see, so you don't trip over your neighbour's telescope, etc. So I would like to see actually people going over to orange rather than red, but just it's not commercially available at the moment. But yeah, orange would be better still than red.
Okay,
Red's
so
pretty good, but
sorry,
orange is better.
I'm sorry, I'm not still confused. Did you say we use the orange or the red in the orange in the field to encourage our dark adaptation? So we're stimulating the cones still in the night.
Well, yes, but
So,
you are suppressing. You do suppress rods.
Right.
Rods do see in red at about the same sensitivity as red cones.
right.
So if you're using brighter color by using red rather than orange, you actually
Right.
are stimulating your rods more.
Okay.
Or so by using orange, where you've got that little bit of green, it's stimulating the green cones, etc. You actually end up. We found that we could decrease the actual total brightness by about 50%. We actually also, part of that trial, we actually deliberately did a visual acuity run using bright red light to see whether it suppressed night vision. And if red light is bright enough, it will suppress your rods and you will lose your night vision.
Oh, all right. Okay, I'll give it a bit more. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a great question, Ken, from Jeff. Could you give a brief outline of lighting impacts at the Landsborough train station and how that approach worked?
Right. So Landsborough Lanes railway station, about 100 or 80 kilometres north of Brisbane. A lot of Sunshine Coast people actually park there, ride in by train, come back to train, back to the railway station. They opened up a car park that had about 300 car parks. Department of Transport and Main Road put in 4,000 Kelvin lighting and lit it up like a prison camp, really. So I actually measured the output and showed that it was the car park was 3 times what the Standard Association recommended. And direct approach to Department of Transport or Main Roads got a very considered reply, which basically said, no, we're not going to do anything about it. We do have the ability to turn them down with our computers, but we're not going to. But I did go to the local member of parliament there and talk to him, and within a week they were turned down to the standard required. So they turned down about 70% from what they were. So that was a big win. And up here in Queensland, the member for Maleny, which is just next to Landsborough, and also at the southern end of the proposed Dark Sky Reserve, is a very staunch dark sky advocate, and as of 6 months ago became the Minister for Environment and Ecotourism. So we are hopeful that we will have or continue to get Andrew Powell's support in trying to roll out a statewide dark sky approach to things.
Now, again, I can't see everyone, so if you put your hand up, I can allocate some time for you. Donald, a digital hand up. Donald, I can see yours, so can you let us know?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Hi, Ken. Thank you very much for your presentation. A quick question for you in relation to the orange light. You mentioned that it wasn't kind of readily available. Where would you differentiate between, say, amber and orange? Because we use a fair bit of amber now in our lighting projects, and there's different forms of amber.
Yes,
would you consider amber to be orange?
Oh yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, they're more or less interchangeable sort of terms.
Okay.
And you've really got to look at the power spectrum curve to actually figure out exactly what they're doing.
Because what we're finding as well with some of the things, we've lots of different technologies within LED for providing amber light. We can do, for example, DE, diode emitted amber, PC amber, or using an amber lens. And from the products that we have, we find the amber lens to be the most efficient, because with the diode emitted amber, we still have that blue spectrum. It's just not as visually apparent.
Yes.
What would your comment be on that concept?
I'm no authority on the amber diode, and I cannot remember off the top of my head what the actual power spectrum curve looks like.
Yeah.
But getting something that is orange but still covers the broad spectrum is what seems to allow you to have the least brightness.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you'd have to be looking at that to come up with the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And again, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Ken? Again, if you want to put your hand up, it's the react button down the bottom. That's a heart shape. No. Ken, I've got a one here from Alex. It says we're hearing a lot about 4000K being better for peripheral vision. Is this a legend?
I have not heard of that kind of data at all. So yeah, I really can't answer that one. I'd be interested to see it. Look, if people can prove to me, like all good scientists, that I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected. But I haven't come across anything to show the superiority in peripheral vision.
So Ken, that then's a bit of a gap in the literature. Where else do you see gaps? Where should we be looking to generate new knowledge to help us have better outcomes?
Look, I think the difficulty, particularly with the street lighting, is kind of the way we test it is rather artificial, and coming up with good methods of actually testing. And also, I think we often don't talk about power spectrums. We sometimes talk about the Kelvin rating, and this many lights with the same Kelvin rating can actually have quite a different power spectrum. So we've got to be kind of taking that into account and really talking about what we call photopic ratios and blue content, rather than just using Kelvin ratings when we're talking about lights. And I suppose what really concerns me is that we have a standard that sets a minimum brightness for things, whereas we really should be researching, do we need to go above the minimum brightness? And we should actually be looking to research that supports the standard of setting a maximum brightness rather than a minimum brightness. Because often I think that lights meet a minimum brightness, but by a factor of 2, 3, or 4. And it would be nice to have research that actually looks at brightness itself, and gives us stuff that is no brighter than what we need.
Thanks. Ken, Ian McLean's got a question for you. Ian, off mute, please.
Yep. G'day. Yeah, Ian McLean from Night Sky Secrets in Cairns. Just on this, I just wonder, I'm an electrician by trade. I teach it, also an astronomer. Are we approaching like the Electrical Contractors Association and people like that? Because how this goes is someone says, I need a light. The electrical contractor goes to the wholesaler, give me a light, and they whack a light up. They're just not educated about it at all. They go, what's cheap? What have you got? And that's what goes up.
Oh, look, I totally agree with that. I think that's a huge problem. I've done some sessions with lighting designers or landscape architects and with electrical contractors, and 80% of them are totally ignorant of this subject,
Yep.
which is no fault of theirs. We are missing somewhere in our education what is going on there. And you talk to them and they don't say, oh, no, that's wrong. They kind of say, wow, I had no idea that all those ideas existed. And so we see things like ball lighting used in landscapes, which
Yep.
are my pet hate. Unfortunately, some of the good fully shielded landscape lighting is more expensive. And I don't know how we deal with that. And yes, obviously, people who aren't aware of what's going on will often say, well, what's the cheapest way to do it? But I think if there was a push from within electrical contractors who understood this, and I don't think it would take much to add to their course or their training or to run special things on this, to very quickly bring them up to date.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it's something from ADSA we can approach the Electrical Contractors Association nationally, at least get it on their radar, because that's where, while you can approach all the professional bodies like large corporations and councils, if you don't get to those electrical contractors who just go and whack up those 50 floodlights for someone, it's going to be hard to deal with the problem.
Yes, so I did attend a National Lighting Council conference a couple of months ago and gave pretty much this talk that you're just seeing down there. But again, it's not filtering down to the trenches. so to
Grassroots.
speak.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the electrician, the guy on the tools, he'll just put up whatever he's given, but you've got to get to the people with the buying power. They're who are making the buying decisions. They're the ones,
Yes.
I guess.
Yep.
Anyway, we'll keep on keeping on.
Yep. Totally agree with you. And thanks for putting up and listening to it twice.
Very well done. Okay, do we have any other questions? I've just unfortunately pressed a button and taken myself out of the chat. Kate, would you like to just expand a little bit on the example that you've put down here with the new papers that have been published around light effect on turtle hatching? Might
Yes,
need to
Lena, I'm
Hi.
here.
Okay.
Thank
Hello.
you. Look, I've popped the link in the chat for anyone that's interested. Ebony King, who works here at Sunshine Coast Council, while she was a student at the University of Sunshine Coast, she looked at different commercially available street lighting that and its influence on hatchling behavioural response for 2 species. And one of the types of lighting that she looked at was PC amber. And she found that for the flatback turtle on the east coast of Australia, that the PC amber was minimally or did not affect the behavioural response or the sea finding behaviour of those hatchlings within 25 metres of the nest emergence site. And with the loggerhead turtle hatchlings, she found that it wasn't suitable to use at 25 metres, but at longer distances from the nest site, it was appropriate to use PC amber. And so I've popped that link in the chat. I think it's a really interesting piece of work that Ebony has put together with lots of participation from lots of different groups and support from Owen McCormack, who's in the chat here too.
Great, thank you. If there's no further questions, I might wrap up. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It's thank you, Ken, for a double act on your own. Fabulous.
Listen in stereo now.
Yeah, we have recorded. We will edit and then post this up for everyone to have a look at. I apologize, but I can't get this. Our next webinar is Landon Bannister, who is the chair of our Ads for Lighting Committee. He will be on the 16th of September, and you can book in for his. We'll send a link to everyone who attended today to book for the next series, next person in this series. But as board chair, thank you all for your interest and enthusiasm. Thank you, Ken, for your sharing your knowledge and anything that we can do to help you and your communities to enjoy the dark night skies more, please reach out and we will look at how we can advocate better for you. Thanks a lot. Bye. I think, Ken, there's lots of lovely thank yous here for you.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Okay.